We need to see a therapist. Talk to someone who can help you process what happened. Bola laughed bitterly. A therapist? And tell them what? That I killed my boyfriend and attacked an innocent man? They will lock me up, Kehinde. Kehinde had always known her sister Bola was different. From a young age, Bola possessed an unsettling charm that drew people to her. She was beautiful, charismatic, and could easily make anyone feel like the center of her world. Kehinde, quieter and more introspective, often found herself in her sister's shadow. But it was a shadow she didn't mind living in until the night that changed everything. It started with a phone call. Kehinde was halfway through her dinner when her phone rang, the screen lighting up with Bola's name. She answered immediately, the smile on her face fading as she heard the panic in her sister's voice. "Kehinde, I need you," Bola said, her voice trembling. "I think I've killed someone." Heart pounding, Kehinde dropped her fork and grabbed her keys. She drove through the night to Bola's apartment, her mind racing with possibilities. When she arrived, she found Bola sitting on the floor, her hands covered in blood, tears streaming down her face. "What happened?" Kehinde asked, kneeling beside her sister. Bola looked up, her eyes wide with fear. "It was an accident. I didn't mean to, I swear. He got angry and attacked me, and I had to defend myself." Kehinde glanced around the room, her gaze landing on the lifeless body of Bola's friend, Ade, sprawled on the kitchen floor. A knife lay beside him, the blade sleek with blood. The sight made her stomach churn, but she forced herself to stay calm. Bola needed her. "We need to clean this up," Kehinde said, her voice steady. "We can't call the police. They'll never believe it was an accident." Over the next few hours, the sisters worked in silence, cleaning every trace of crime. Kehinde's hand shook as she scrubbed the blood stains, her mind numb with shock. She couldn't understand how things escalated to this point, but she knew she had to protect Bola no matter what. When they finished, they wrapped Ade's body in a sheet and carried it to the car. Kehinde drove to a remote area outside the city, the weight of their actions pressing down on her. As they dug a shallow grave, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much darker. Back at the apartment, Kehinde helped Bola wash the blood from her hands. The water ran red for what felt like an eternity before finally turning clear. Bola's sobs had subsided into silent tears, and Kehinde pulled her into a tight embrace. "It's going to be okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. "We'll get through this together." In the days that followed, Kehinde tried to return to her normal routine, but the memory of that night haunted her. She kept a close eye on Bola, who seemed to be struggling with the weight of their secrets. Every time Bola smiled or laughed, it felt forced, like she was trying to convince herself that everything was fine. One evening, Kehinde found Bola staring at herself in the mirror, a strange look in her eyes. "What's wrong?" Kehinde asked, stepping into the room. Bola turned to her, a bitter smile on her lips. "Do you ever feel like you are not in control of your own life? Like something dark is lurking inside you, waiting to take over?" Kehinde's heart ached for her sister. "You are not alone, Bola. We will get through this, I promise." But as Kehinde left the room, she couldn't shake the feeling that Bola was slipping further away from her. The first cut had been made, and Kehinde feared it wouldn't be the last. The weeks following Ade's death were tense and filled with an unspoken dread. Kehinde found herself constantly looking over her shoulder, expecting the police to show up at any moment. Bola seemed to be holding up, but there was a darkness in her eyes that Kehinde had never seen before. It worried her deeply, but she didn't know how to reach her sister. Kehinde continued with her life as best as she could, burying herself in her work as a nurse. The hospital was a sanctuary, a place where she could forget, even if just for a few hours, the horror of that night. But every time she returned home, the memory of what they had done would flood back, and she would find herself watching Bola closely, searching for any sign that her sister was breaking. One evening, after a particularly grueling shift, Kehinde returned home to find Bola sitting at the kitchen table staring at her phone. The room was dark, the only light coming from the phone screen. Kehinde flicked on the light switch, illuminating the scene. Bola didn't look up. "What's going on?" Kehinde asked, concern etching in her voice. Bola finally lifted her gaze, her eyes empty. I think I'm being followed." Kennedy's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I've seen the same man outside my office, at the grocery store, even here, near our building. He just stands there, watching me." Panic surged through Kehinde. "Did you get a good look at him? What does he look like?" Bola shook her head. "He's always wearing a hood or a cap, something to hide his face. But I know it's the same man." Kehinde tried to remain calm. "It could be a coincidence. Maybe he's not following you." Bola's eyes flashed with a mix of fear and anger. "It is not a coincidence, Kehinde. He knows." Kehinde felt a chill run through her spine. "We have to be careful. We can't let anyone find out what happened." The sisters decided to change their routines, taking different routes to work, avoiding familiar places. But the sense of being watched never left them. Kehinde felt it too now, a constant prickle at the back of her neck. She didn't tell Bola, not wanting to increase her fear. One night, the unease became too much to bear. Kehinde woke to the sound of footsteps outside her bedroom door. She crept out of the bed, heart pounding, and found Bola standing in the hallway holding a kitchen knife. "Bola, what are you doing?" Kehinde whispered. Bola turned to her, eyes wide and wild. "He's here. I saw him outside the window." Kehinde grabbed her sister's arm, pulling her back into the room. "Put the knife down, Bola. You are scaring me." But Bola shook her off. "We have to protect ourselves. If he knows what we did, he could go to the police." Kehinde realized that Bola was slipping further into paranoia. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "We'll call the police ourselves, report that someone is stalking you, but we can't handle this on our own." Reluctantly, Bola agreed. The police came, took their statements, and promised to increase patrols in the area. But Kehinde knew it wouldn't be enough to ease Bola's mind. The fear had taken root too deeply. A few days later, Kehinde came home to find Bola gone. Her phone was off. None of their friends had seen her. Panic gripped Kehinde as she scoured the city, searching for a sign of her sister. Hours turned into a sleepless night, but Bola remained missing. The next morning, Kehinde received a call from an unknown number. Her heart raced as she answered. "Hello?" "Kehinde," Bola's voice came through, trembling. "I'm at an old warehouse by the docks. I I think I found him." Kehinde's blood ran cold. "Stay where you are. I'm coming." She drove to the docks, her mind racing with fear. The warehouse loomed in the early morning light, an abandoned shell of rust and decay. Kehinde found Bola inside, crouched behind a stack of crates, the knife still clutched in her hand. "Bola, what are you doing?" Kehinde asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Bola pointed to a figure lying on the ground, unconscious and bound with rope. "He was watching me. I had to stop him." Kehinde approached the man cautiously. He was breathing, but there was a gash on his forehead. and his face was bruised. She turned back to Bola horrified. "We need to call an ambulance. This has to stop, Bola." But Bola's eyes were distant, as if she couldn't hear her. "I did it to protect us, Kehinde. I had no choice." As Kehinde dialed for help, she realized the terrifying truth. Bola was spiraling out of control, and this time it wasn't just their secret at stake, it was their lives. The bonds of blood that tied them together were now the chains that threatened to drag them both into darkness. Dark secrets. The days following the incident at the warehouse were a blur of police questioning, hospital visits, and sleepless nights. The man Bola had attacked, identified as a private investigator named Shola, had survived, but the damage was done. Kehinde and Bola were thrust into a spotlight they had desperately tried to avoid. Kehinde spent hours at the police station, her nerves fraying with each passing moment. They had managed to concoct a story. Bola, convinced she was being stalked, had acted in self-defense. Shola, in turn, claimed he had been hired to investigate a different case and had no idea who Bola was. The police, skeptical but lacking evidence to prove otherwise, released Bola with a warning. Back home, the sisters sat in their small living room, the tension palpable. Bola stared at her hands, now clean but forever stained in Kehinde's mind. "This can't go on, Bola," Kehinde said softly. "We have to get help." Bola looked up, her eyes haunted. "Help? From who?" "No one can help us. It's too late." Kehinde shook her head. "It's not too late. We need to see a therapist. Talk to someone who can help you process what happened." Bola laughed bitterly. "A therapist? And tell them what? That I killed my boyfriend and attacked an innocent man? They will lock me up, Kehinde." Kehinde reached out, taking Bola's hands in hers. "I can't lose you, Bola. We need to try." Reluctantly, Bola agreed. Kehinde found a therapist who specialized in trauma and convinced Bola to attend the sessions. At first, Bola was resistant, her answers clipped and defensive. But slowly, over the weeks, she began to open up, revealing glimpses of the pain and fear that had driven her actions. One evening, after a particularly intense session, Bola sat on the couch staring into space. Kehinde joined her, offering a cup of tea. "What did you talk about today?" Kehinde asked gently. Bola sighed, taking the cup. "My childhood. Things I had forgotten, or maybe just wanted to forget." Kehinde nodded, encouraging her to continue. "Do you remember Uncle Femi?" Bola asked, her voice trembling. Kehinde's heart sank. She had buried memories of their uncle, a man who had often stayed with them when they were children. "Yes, I remember." Bola's eyes filled with tears. "He used to come into my room at night, Kehinde. He said it was our little secret. I was so scared. I didn't know what to do." Kehinde felt a wave of nausea. She had suspected something, but as a child herself, she hadn't understood the signs. "Bola, I'm so sorry. I should have protected you." Bola shook her head. "It wasn't your fault. None of it was your fault." The revelation brought them closer, the bond of shared trauma knitting them together. Kehinde felt a fierce protectiveness for her sister, a determination to help her heal. But as Bola delved deeper into her past, her behavior became more erratic. She would wake up screaming from nightmares, her cries echoing through the apartment. Kehinde often found her pacing the living room, muttering to herself. One night, Kehinde woke up to find Bola standing over her bed, a vacant look in her eyes. "Bola, what are you doing?" Kehinde whispered, trying to mask her fear. Bola blinked, as if out of a trance. I thought I heard something." Kehinde sat up, taking Bola's hand. "Come on, let's get you back to bed." As she led her sister back to her room, Kehinde's mind raced. She couldn't shake the feeling that Bola was slipping further away, consumed by the darkness of her past. The next day, Kehinde confided in Bola's therapist, Dr. Amara. She explained Bola's worsening condition, the nightmares, the sleepwalking. Dr. Amara listened intently, her expression grave. Bola's trauma is deep-rooted, Kehinde. It's not uncommon for repressed memories to surface in distressing ways. But she needs your support now more than ever. Kehinde nodded, determined to be the anchor her sister needed. But the strain was taking its toll on her as well. She felt the weight of their secret pressing down, threatening to crush her. That evening, Kehinde returned home to find the apartment in disarray. Furniture was overturned, and there were shards of broken glass on the floor. Panic surged through her as she called out for Bola. Bola, where are you? She found her sister in the bathroom, huddled in a corner, her hands covered in blood. Kehinde's heart dropped. Bola, what happened? Bola looked up, tears streaming down her face. I I don't know. I just snapped. I couldn't control it. Kehinde's mind raced. She knew she had to get Bola to a hospital, but fear gripped her. What if they couldn't hide their past any longer? She wrapped her arms around Bola, holding her close. It's going to be okay, Bola. We'll get through this together. As they sat there surrounded by the evidence of Bola's breakdown, Kehinde realized the full extent of their predicament. The dark secrets they harbored were tearing them apart, and the line between protecting her sister and losing her completely was becoming increasingly blurred. Kehinde knew they needed a miracle, but miracles, she thought bitterly, were hard to come by when you lived in the shadow of so many dark secrets. Love and lies. Kehinde spent the next few days trying to repair the physical and emotional damage from Bola's latest breakdown. She took leave from work to care for her sister, cleaning up the apartment and making sure Bola attended every therapy session. Yet, despite her best efforts, the atmosphere remained tense and fraught with anxiety. One evening, while Bola was resting, Kehinde received a call from Dr. Amara. Kehinde, I'd like to discuss Bola's progress. Can you come to my office tomorrow? Kehinde agreed, her heart heavy with worry. The next day, she sat in Dr. Amara's office, clutching a cup of lukewarm tea. Kehinde, Dr. Amara began, Bola's trauma is severe. She needs intensive therapy and possibly medication to stabilize her condition. I also believe it will be beneficial for you to join some of our sessions. She needs to feel that she's not alone in this. Kehinde nodded, her eyes welling with tears. I just want her to get better. I'll do whatever it takes. As Kehinde left the office, she felt a mix of hope and fear. She was willing to do anything for Bola, but the road ahead seemed daunting. Back at the apartment, Kehinde found Bola in the kitchen, attempting to make dinner. It was a rare sight and brought a flicker of hope to Kehinde's heart. Hey, Kehinde said softly, smells good. What are you making? Bola looked up, a small smile playing on her lips. Just some jollof rice. I thought it might cheer us up. Kehinde smiled back. It already has. As they sat down to eat, the atmosphere seemed lighter, the shadows of their past momentarily at bay. They talked about trivial things, the kind of normal conversation Kehinde had longed for, but the respite was short-lived. Later that night, Bola approached Kehinde with a troubled look. There's something I need to tell you. Kehinde's heart sank. What is it? Bola took a deep breath. I've started seeing someone. His name is Dapo. I met him at the therapist's office. He's kind, Kehinde. He understands what I'm going through. Kehinde was taken aback. Bola, are you sure this is a good idea? You are still healing. You don't need any more complications. Bola's expression hardened. I need this, Kehinde. I need someone who sees me for who I am, not just my problems. Kehinde sighed. Okay, but please be careful. Days turned into weeks, and Bola's relationship with Dapo seemed to flourish. Kehinde was wary, but seeing Bola smile again gave her a glimmer of hope. One evening, Bola invited Dapo over for the dinner. Kehinde agreed, wanting to meet the man who had brought light back into her sister's life. Dapo arrived with flowers and a warm smile. He was charming, with an easy laugh and a compassionate demeanour. As they ate, Kehinde found herself relaxing, believing for a moment that things might actually get better. After dinner, Dapo and Bola went for a walk. Kehinde stayed behind to clean up, a rare sense of peace settling over her. But it was shattered when she received a call from an unknown number. "Hello," Kehinde answered. "Miss Kehinde, this is Detective Folarin. We need to discuss the incident involving Bola and the private investigator. New evidence has come to light." Kehinde's blood ran cold. "What kind of evidence?" "I'd prefer to discuss it in person. Can you come to the station tomorrow?" Kehinde agreed, her mind racing with fear and confusion. She spent a sleepless night, haunted by what the detective might know. The next day, she met with Detective Folarin, who showed her security footage from a nearby store on the night of the warehouse incident. The footage clearly showed Bola following Shola, not the other way round. "Kehinde," the detective said, "this changes things. Bola could face serious charges." Kehinde's heart pounded. "Please, there must be some mistake." Bola was terrified. She thought he was stalking her. The detective's expression softened. "I understand she's been through a lot, but the evidence is damning. We will need to bring her in for questioning." Kehinde left the station in a daze, the weight of their situation pressing down on her. She rushed home to find Bola and Dapo sitting on the couch, laughing softly. The sight filled her with a mix of relief and dread. "Bola, we need to talk," Kehinde said, trying to keep her voice steady. Bola's smile faded as she saw the look on her sister's face. "What's wrong?" Kehinde explained the situation, her voice trembling. Bola's face went pale, her eyes wide with fear. "Dapo, I need you to leave," Kehinde said gently. "We need to handle this as a family." Dapo nodded, squeezing Bola's hand before leaving. Once he was gone, Kehinde turned to her sister. "We need to get ahead of this, Bola. We have to tell the truth." Bola shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I can't go to prison, Kehinde. I can't." Kehinde pulled her sister into a tight embrace. "We'll find a way through this together, but we need to be honest." As they sat together, Kehinde realized the depth of their predicament. The lies they had told to protect each other were unraveling, and the love they shared was being tested like never before. But Kehinde was determined to stand by her sister no matter the cost. In the days that followed, Kehinde and Bola prepared for the inevitable questioning. They worked with Dr. Amara to ensure Bola's mental state was documented and understood. Dapo remained a constant support, his presence a balm for Bola's frayed nerves. When the police finally came, Kehinde stood by her sister's side, holding her hand, a web of deceit. The tension in the air was palpable as Bola and Kehinde sat in the police station's dark interrogation room. Detective Folarin's expression was stern, his eyes focused on the sisters with an intensity that made Kehinde's heart race. The weight of their shared secret pressed down on her, and she squeezed Bola's hand, trying to convey a sense of reassurance she didn't entirely feel. Detective Folarin cleared his throat, breaking the heavy silence. "Bola, Kehinde, thank you for coming in today. We need to clarify some discrepancies in your statement about the night of warehouse incident." Kehinde nodded, her mouth dry. "We're here to cooperate, detective. We want to clear this up." The detective leaned forward, his gaze shifting to Bola. "Bola, can you re-explain why you were seen following Shola on the night in question?" Bola took a deep breath, her voice trembling slightly. I I was scared. I thought he was stalking me, so I followed him to see what he was up to. I didn't know what else to do. Detective Folarin frowned. You didn't think to call the police? Bola shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. I was too afraid. I thought no one would believe me. Kehinde interjected, her voice firm. Detective, you have to understand Bola has been through a lot. She's been in therapy for severe trauma. She wasn't thinking clearly. The detective regarded Kehinde thoughtfully before nodding. I've spoken with Dr. Amara. She's provided a detailed account of Bola's mental health history. It's clear that Bola's past experiences have affected her judgment. Kehinde felt a flicker of hope. Then you understand why she acted the way she did. Detective Folarin sighed. I do, but the law is the law. We need to determine whether Bola's actions constitute self-defense or something more deliberate. As the interrogation continued, Kehinde's mind raced. They had prepared for this, rehearsed their statements, and ensured that Bola's mental health records were accessible. Yet, the fear of slipping up and exposing their lies gnawed at her. After what felt like hours, the detective finally stood. We'll review everything and be in touch. For now, you are free to go, but don't leave town. Kehinde and Bola left the station, the weight of their uncertainty pressing down on them. As they drove home, Bola's silence was deafening. What are we going to do, Kehinde? Bola whispered, her voice breaking. Kehinde reached over, taking Bola's hand. We'll get through this. We have to stay strong. Back at the apartment, Dapo was waiting for them, his face etched with concern. He enveloped Bola in a tight hug, his presence a comforting anchor. How did it go? Dapo asked softly. Kehinde sighed. It's complicated. They have a footage of Bola following Shola. It's not looking good. Dapo nodded, his expression grim. We'll figure something out. We are in this together. The next few days were a blur of anxiety and strategizing. Kehinde spent hours researching legal defenses, consulting with Dr. Amara, and trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. But the tension was taking its toll on all of them. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Bola's phone buzzed with a message. She glanced at the screen and paused. What is it? Kehinde asked, alarmed. Bola handed her the phone. The message from an unknown number. I know what you did. Meet me at the warehouse if you want to keep your secret. Kehinde's blood ran cold. Who could this be? Dapo frowned. It's a trap. We can't go. But Bola shook her head. What if they go to the police? We have to find out what they know. Against their better judgment, they decided to go. The drive to the warehouse was tense, each of them lost in their thoughts. When they arrived, the place was eerily silent, the air thick with apprehension. As they stepped inside, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Shola, the private investigator. He looked worse for fear, his face still bruised from their encounter with Bola. What do you want? Kehinde demanded, her voice trembling. Shola smirked. I want the truth, and I want to get paid for keeping it to myself. Bola stepped forward, her eyes blazing with anger. You've been stalking me, threatening me. Why? Shola's expression darkened. I was hired to investigate you, Bola. Someone knew you had secrets and wanted me to find out what they were. Kehinde's mind raced. Who hired you? Shola shook his head. That's not for you to know. But if you don't want the police to hear everything I've found, you'll pay me. A lot. Desperation clawed at Kehinde. We don't have that kind of money. Shola's smirk widened. Then find a way, or I go to the cops. As they drove back, a heavy silence settled over them. The web of deceit was tightening, and Kehinde felt like they were suffocating. Back at the apartment, Dapo tried to comfort Bola, but she pulled away. "You are in too deep, Dapo. We can't get out of this." Kehinde took a breath, her mind racing for a solution. "We need to find out who hired Shola. That's the key to everything." They spent the next few days digging into Shola's background, using every contact and resource they had. Finally, a name emerged: Mr. Adebayo, a wealthy businessman with a reputation for being ruthless. Kehinde and Dapo decided to confront him. They arranged a meeting at his office, their nerves on edge. Mr. Adebayo greeted them with a cold smile. "What can I do for you?" he asked, his tone dripping with false politeness. Kehinde didn't mince words. "We know you hired Shola to investigate Bola. Why?" Mr. Bayo leaned back in his chair, his smile widening. "Bola crossed someone very powerful. They wanted to ensure she paid for her actions." Kehinde's heart pounded. "Who, and what do you want?" Mr. Adebayo's eyes gleamed with malice. "Let's just say Bola's past is catching up with her. As for what I want, that's simple. I want to see how far you are willing to go to protect her." As they left the office, Kehinde felt a cold dread settle over her. They were trapped in a web of deceit, and every move they made seemed to tighten the strands around them. Back home, they shared what they had learned with Bola. Her face palled, her eyes filled with tears. "What are we going to do?" Kehinde hugged her sister tightly. "We'll figure it out. We'll have to stay strong. We won't let them destroy us." But as the days passed, the sense of impending doom grew stronger. Kehinde knew they were running out of time. The web of deceit was closing in, and they would need every ounce of strength, cunning, and courage to escape it. Their love for each other was their greatest weapon, but even that might not be enough to save them from the dark forces conspiring against them. The days leading up to the final reckoning were filled with tension and dread. Kehinde and Bola knew they were running out of time. Shola's threat and Mr. Adebayo's cryptic warnings loomed over them like dark clouds. Every step felt like a misstep, every word a potential betrayal. One evening, as Kehinde sat in the living room with Dapo and Bola, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She answered, her heart pounding. "Kehinde, it's Detective Folarin. We need you and Bola to come to the station immediately." Kehinde's breath caught in her throat. "What's this about?" "We have new evidence. It's urgent," the detective replied before hanging up. Kehinde shared the news with Bola and Dapo, their faces mirroring her fear. "We need to go," she said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. The drive to the police station was silent, the atmosphere thick with anxiety. When they arrived, Detective Folarin led them to a conference room. On the table were several documents and photographs. "We've been continuing our investigation," the detective began, "and we've uncovered some new information." He spread out the documents, revealing emails and bank statements. Kehinde's eyes widened as she recognized the names and transactions. "It turns out Mr. Adebayo has been involved in some illegal activities," Detective Folarin continued. "We believe he hired Shola to gather information on Bola, not for personal reasons, but to use her as a scapegoat for his crimes." Bola's face palled. "What? Why me?" "Mr. Adebayo needed a distraction," the detective explained. "Your connection to Ade, his former employee, made you an easy target. He thought if he could frame you, it would divert attention away from his operations." Kehinde felt a surge of anger. "So he was using Bola to save himself?" Detective Folarin nodded. "Exactly. But now that we have this evidence, we can take action. We need your help to bring him down." Kehinde and Bola exchanged a glance. This was their chance to end the nightmare, but it meant stepping into even greater danger. "What do you need us to do?" Kehinde asked, determination hardening her voice. "We need you to wear a wire and meet with Mr. Adebayo," the detective said. "Get him to incriminate himself. It is risky, but it's the only way to ensure he is brought to justice." Fear flickered in Bola's eyes, but she nodded. I'll do it. I want this to end. The next day, Bola prepared for the meeting, the wire carefully hidden under her clothes. Dapo and Kehinde watched anxiously as Detective Folarin gave final instructions. Remember, stay calm and try to get him to talk about the investigation and his involvement, the detective said. Bola nodded, taking a deep breath. I'll do my best. Kehinde hugged her sister tightly. Be careful. We'll be right outside. The meeting was set to take place at a secluded cafe. Kehinde, Dapo and the police team waited in a nearby van, listening intently to the conversation through their headphones. Bola arrived at the cafe, her heart pounding. She spotted Mr. Adebayo at a corner table, his expression smug and confident. She forced herself to stay calm as she approached him. Bola, it's good to see you, Mr. Adebayo said, his tone dripping with insincerity. Mr. Adebayo, Bola replied, sitting down. I came because I want to understand why you did this to me. Mr. Adebayo leaned back, a sinister smile playing on his lips. It's nothing personal, Bola, just business. I needed a way to divert attention and you were convenient. Bola clenched her fist under the table. You ruined my life. Mr. Adebayo shrugged. Collateral damage. But if you cooperate, maybe we can find a way to make this all go away. How? Bola asked, her voice trembling. What do you want from me? I need you to take the fall for some transactions, Mr. Adebayo said smoothly in return. I'll make sure you are taken care of. A cushy life in prison isn't so bad, is it? Kehinde's heart raced as she listened, praying Bola could hold it together. And what about the investigation into my sister and me? Bola pressed. You hired Shola to follow us, to gather dirt on us. Mr. Adebayo's eyes narrowed. Yes, I needed leverage. Shola did a good job, didn't he? Bola forced herself to stay calm. And you think you can just walk away from all this? Mr. Adebayo leaned in, his voice low and threatening. I always walk away, Bola. Always. The police had had enough. Detective Folarin signaled the team, and within moments they stormed the cafe, arresting Mr. Adebayo. The look of shock and betrayal on his face as he was handcuffed was a small victory for Bola and Kehinde. Back at the station, Detective Folarin congratulated them. You did great, Bola. We've got him. Bola nodded, exhaustion and relief washing over her. Thank you, detective. As they left the station, the sun was settling, casting a golden glow over the city. Dapo wrapped his arm around Bola and Kehinde walked beside them, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in months. We did it, Kehinde said softly. It's finally over. Bola smiled, though tears glistened in her eyes. We couldn't have done it without each other. Dapo nodded. You two are the strongest people I know. I'm proud of you both. As they walked home, the weight of their past began to lift. They knew there would still be challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, they felt hope. Kehinde and Bola stood together on the balcony of their apartment looking out over the city. The darkness that had once threatened to consume them had been pushed back, and the future, though uncertain, felt promising. We will get through this, Kehinde said, her voice firm. Together. Bola nodded, her smile genuine. Together. In the end, it was their love, their unwavering bond that had saved them. The web of deceit had been torn apart, and though they carried the scars of their ordeal, they were stronger for it. The final reckoning had come and gone, and they had emerged not unscathed but unbroken.